Good afternoon and welcome to Nutmeg Sports here on the HAN Network. I'm Frank Granito and I'm joined in studio today by my co-host Donald Eng. Don, we missed you on the tour, but we're very excited to be back. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm feeling like my voice is kind of rusty, like I'm coming off the DL though. Hopefully I can make it through without straining something, so we'll see how this goes.
It wasn't the same without you out there, but again, we actually have a lot going on this week now when you think about it. College football just started, a couple big wins for some of the Connecticut schools. The Bluefish are winding down the final two and a half weeks of the season now, but most importantly, which I think all of us are most looking forward to, is that we've got high school football kicking off on Friday night this week.
Yeah, there's nothing like the fall sports. You come into the end of the baseball season, the fall sports, the football, the soccer, all these things are just starting, ready to get going. It's like the sense of anticipation, like a week to go until the high school sports season really gets rolling, and that's when it just becomes a lot of fun.
Football starts this weekend. All the other games will kick off, at least from the HAN point of view, next week for us. We talked about the Bluefish. You've also got the Yankees and the Mets who are in the middle of the playoff race too.
Surprisingly.
So it really is incredible. It's exciting right now around the area. There are a lot of competitive sports going on. But, speaking of good competition, let's start with the college football that we had last weekend. And the UConn Huskies were part of the festivities on opening night, and they did not disappoint, as UConn escaped the Maine Black Bears by a final score of 24-21 thanks to a Bobby Puyol last-second field goal. The two teams were tied 7-7 at halftime and 14-14 at the start of the fourth quarter. Unfortunately, Maine kicker Patrick Leonard was 0 for 2 on field goals during the game, while Puyol was 1 for 1 with the game winner. UConn scored the final 10 points of the game, which started with an Akil Newsome 2-yard touchdown run with just over 6 minutes remaining in the fourth. The winning drive came after UConn defensive tackle Mike Myers blocked a field goal with about a minute and a half to play. UConn led by Brian Sharifs. He had 162 passing yards, 95 rushing, and Noel Thomas added in 9 catches for 70 yards. Don, it was a really fun game. I don't know that that's how UConn wanted to win, but a great way to start the season.
Well, a win's a win, and they'll take it. I thought it was kind of a shaky performance against a team that they really should have handled a little bit better. But then again, you can say that about a lot of schools on their opening night performances. But South Alabama knocking off not Texas A&M, but I'm drawing a blank. But you know what I mean there. And the Maine defense kept Arkell Newsome under wraps for most of the game. He was UConn's most dangerous weapon last year. As happens a lot in games like this, the bigger, deeper team was able to kind of get it done and take a little bit of control in the fourth quarter. The good news is UConn didn't play especially well, but they still pull out a win. 1-0, a whole lot better than 0-1. LSU, USC, Notre Dame, they'd all love to be 1-0 right now.
Oh, you're absolutely right, and it was, Mississippi State and South Alabama. That was the first FCS upset of the weekend. You saw Richmond take down Virginia, and Richmond handled Virginia. It was a blowout win. Maine came in, and they had their chances. It looked like they were going to be the first FCS team who came away with the victory on this weekend against an FBS team, but credit UConn, they got it done when they needed to and did what they had to win.
And I almost feel like, with UConn, now they're talking about the Big 12, and they've been in that American Athletic Conference for a while. I almost think like it's almost time to establish like a Northeastern football conference. The University of Connecticut, UMass is also looking for a home for their football program. Maine, it's almost like we're going to reconstruct the old Yankee conference, but we're going to make it in football bowl subdivisions. So we'll see how that goes. These larger state schools that want to play football really need to somehow get themselves together.
And you make a good point, and you get that feel that that's what the American Conference should be. It's almost what was left of the Big East Football Conference, and they had to reshape, and it's American now because they've got so many teams spread out throughout it, including Houston, SMU. But let's be honest, Houston took care of Oklahoma this weekend. They're on the path to the Big 12, and
that was a strong audition for Houston.
I agree. UConn getting into the Big 12, and I heard a great argument about it the other day. UConn gets a look at the Big 12 because now you can bring in basketball and what role they could play in an already strong basketball conference. But football-wise, I think they're more competitive and could be a better team staying with the American Conference or trying, like you said, to create a conference that maybe includes a Villanova, Maine, UMass, teams from the northern New England region that could really produce a competitive football throughout the year.
Competitive football. I mean, there's obviously the open question of does the region produce enough talent to be distributed among 6 or 8 bowl subdivision teams, especially if they want to compete with power conference schools. Can you get enough talent out of the region to stock a roster of 6 or 8 teams? Probably not. But then again, UConn recruits regionally at least now, not so much just Connecticut. So it's a move that has to be made. I mean, because essentially you have every single member of the American Athletic Conference that wants more than anything to get out of the AAC. I mean, you saw Houston openly tweeting the Big 12 during the game, to watch their game. So, there's no real easy answers. It's always, the initial thought was that UConn to the ACC, then UConn to the Big 12. We'll see if that works out, but certainly, they need to find a home for that football program.
And the tough problem with the ACC is where I think they fit in better. You've got the likes of a Virginia, a Boston College, who are really on par with them football and basketball-wise. They're basketball-oriented schools right now that are just struggling to return to their football glory days. But, they moved down the East Coast this week. They'll play in Annapolis on 3:30 on Saturday against Navy. That's another school that, with the way that college football is working right now and moving more and more towards the Power 5 and the rest, Navy pretty soon is going to be looking for a home. Independent schools are not going to be the same. That's a school that you could consider in that New England or North
Army.
Exactly.
Yeah.
2 schools like that you keep the rivalry together. They could move into that conference. And I think that would be a good shift for a lot of them.
And I think you'll see Army Army coming into the AAC because they tried it about several years ago they tried being in Conference USA. Wasn't really a very good fit. But with Navy already competitive in the in the AAC, and you could have Army and Navy in there. You keep the traditional Army Navy game. If those 2 schools happen to be, especially with Navy being in the Western AAC division, you put Army in the East. If those 2 schools happen to be leading their conferences, their respective divisions, then the Army Navy game becomes a divisional a conference championship game, and then it becomes even more fun.
It could be very cool, but again, it was awesome. Big picture, it was great seeing UConn being able to fight off, get that win, start the season on the right foot. It's like you said, a win is a win, and it was great for that. There were a couple other Connecticut teams in action. Let's go now to Sacred Heart, who also had a big win, Don.
Yeah, the Sacred Heart football team scored 12 unanswered points in the second half to beat the gloriously named, if I do say so, Stetson Hatters, 18-14 in the season opener Saturday night at Spec Martin Memorial Stadium. The Pioneers outgained Stetson 399 yards to 295, rushing for 227 of those yards. Sacred Heart's defense held the Hatters to 35 total yards in the second half and 5 of 16 on third down for the game. Senior linebacker Kevin Barry had a career-high 13 tackles, including 3 for a loss, and also a key forced fumble in the fourth quarter. Osei Imiokparia rushed for 112 yards and the go-ahead touchdown on the first play of the fourth quarter. R.J. Knoll was 16 of 34 passing for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. Sacred Heart actually trailed that game, 14-6 at the half, closed to within a couple of points with 1:20 to play in the third. On third and goal from the Stetson 17, Knoll found Andrew O'Neilan in the end zone to make the score 14-12. The 2-point conversion attempt, though, unsuccessful. And after forcing Stetson to punt, the Pioneers started the fourth with the ball at their own 20. And then on the first play of that drive, Imikparia ran to the right through the Hatters defense, 80 yards for the go-ahead touchdown. So the Pioneers opened their home slate Saturday with September 10th with a 1 p.m. game against Valparaiso at Campus Field. So again, another Connecticut team off to a 1-0 start in that Northeastern Conference. Exciting football in that Northeastern Conference.
It really is, and Sacred Heart did not play a very good game. They struggled terribly in the first half, but it was great to see them bounce back. Sacred Heart could be very competitive this year. They have a lot of top-heavy talent, a lot of seniors coming back. Could be a strong team throughout, not only in the conference, but moving forward when you get to the playoffs. Don, 2 of the Pioneers on the team, or 2 of the seniors on the team, actually earned some national recognition for the Pioneers as well.
Yeah, the aforementioned Imukparia and also Kevin Barry named the Northeast Conference's defensive and offensive players of the week, respectively, for their efforts in the 18-14 win. Barry had a career-high 13 tackles, 3 for a loss on Saturday. He also had a key sack, forced and recovered a fumble late in the fourth quarter to seal the win. Sacred Heart held Stetson to 35 yards of offense in the second half as the Pioneers rallied past the Hatters. And then on the other side of the ball, Imigparia had his second career 100-yard rushing effort Saturday, carrying the ball 13 times for 112 yards and the game-winning touchdown on an 80-yard run, the longest run of his career. So great job by Sacred Heart.
It is. It's the second time that Imigparia has actually won the Player of the Week award for the conference. Barry, it's the first time he's earned this type of recognition, but they're two very important seniors to the team. They had a great game, stepped up when they needed to down the stretch. Barry and that defense was phenomenal in the second half. The fact that Stetson's held to 35 yards doesn't do it enough justice, just saying that. And Imigparia, I mean, came through and made a play when he needed to make a play for that Pioneers offense.
Yeah, and Sacred Heart really quietly, I think under the radar, has become a very solid football program. In the Northeast Conference doesn't really get a lot of attention, at least as far as in the football championship subdivision goes, the former Division I AA. But, they've got a solid fan base now. They've got a fun game day atmosphere at Campus Field. So, just quietly, Sacred Heart has put a lot of effort into athletics in the last decade or so, and that football program really has come a long way.
And it should be a good one next weekend with Valparaiso coming up here for Sacred Heart's home opener, and we look forward to seeing that one. And we'll have some highlights and wrap-up of that next Monday here on Nutmeg Sports. Finally, Don, in the college ranks, the Western Connecticut State Colonials had a huge win to start their season off as well. Junior quarterback Quinn Fleeting connected with J. Ward Chrissom from 81 yards out with just under a minute remaining in the game, as we've got the highlight right here. And that was to lift Western Connecticut State to a come-from-behind 35-31 victory at the WAC on Saturday night. Fleeting went 27 of 40 for 425 yards and threw 4 touchdowns on the night. His touchdown tosses were from 11, 19, 12, and 81 yards, respectively. And 2 of those scoring passes, were to Chrissom, who finished with 14 catches, Don, for 230 yards. Defensively, Western Connecticut had 3 players with a game-high 7 tackles, and it was, Brennan Diaz who led all of the Hawks with 3 pass breakups. It was an unbelievable back-and-forth game. Quinn Fleeting was phenomenal for the Colonials, throwing 4 touchdowns, over 400 yards, but 3 Connecticut schools, Don, that had to post come-from-behind victories in the final few minutes. Just really a great weekend for Connecticut college football.
It really was. The other thing I wanted to mention, we'll call it a little bit of foreshadowing there. Central Connecticut actually lost their opener on Saturday, but as we mentioned before off the air, one of the up-and-coming freshmen on that Central Connecticut football team, Xavier Bass, a Harding product. He's a freshman there on Central Connecticut's football team. We're going to be talking about Harding football a little bit later on.
Yeah, we do have some news for them. As for Western Connecticut State, the Colonials are on the road next Saturday. They go up to take on Union College with a 1-0 record. Kickoff will be slated for 4 p.m. Let's take a break here on Nutmeg Sports, but when Don and I get back, we'll shift gears a little bit and we'll take a look at the Bridgeport Bluefish and what's been going on for them in the Atlantic League as they close down the regular season.
Have a sports injury or a slip and fall that needs immediate care? Coastal Ortho Express Urgent Care gives you direct access to an orthopedic specialist fast, without an appointment. Biking, golf, tennis, soccer, whatever the sports injury is, sprain or fracture, Coastal Ortho Express can help. Coastal Ortho Express Urgent Care, open Monday through Saturday, now in 2 locations. The iPark building at 761 Main Avenue in Norwalk and 36 Old Kings Highway South in Darien. Or go to coastalorthoexpress.com, like them on Facebook.
Hi, this is Leo Carl from Carl Chevrolet in New Canaan. And you've heard me talk about the Chevy Volt for years. The new model gets 53 miles on EV charge daily, plus 420-mile full range. But don't take my word for it. You need to come in and test drive the Volt yourself. Visit us at 261 Elm Street in New Canaan or online at carldirect.com.
A Better View Window Cleaning Plus has been cleaning glass all over Connecticut for over 20 years. They also specialize in cleaning chandeliers, mirrors, skylights, tiles, and will power wash anything that needs cleaning. They hold an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and are fully insured and bonded. When you deal with a Better View, you're dealing with the best, not the rest. Call today for a free estimate, 203-284-8836, or visit them online, abetterviewcleaning.com.
Give your day a jumpstart with the latest news, sports, weather, and more on Coffee Break, live on the HAN Network, weekdays at 11 a.m. Connecticut news doesn't get any more local than on Coffee Break.
Welcome back to Nutmeg Sports here on the HAN Network with Donald Eng. I am Frank Granito in studio today, and we're going to shift gears now and we take a look at what the Bridgeport Bluefish have had going on, especially in yesterday's game where the Bluefish were able to defeat the Long Island Ducks 3-1 at the Bethpage Ballpark in the opener of a 4-game series and 7-game road trip. The Bluefish trail the reigning Atlantic League baseball champions Somerset Patriots by 2.5 games for first place in the second half of the Liberty Division standings, and they have 13 games remaining to make up that difference and find a way to qualify for the postseason. Bridgeport's starting pitcher Ross Seaton picked up his first victory as a member of the Bluefish, and in grand fashion, firing a complete game, allowing just 1 run on 3 hits, with walking 1 across along the way. Bridgeport took a 2-0 lead into the top half of the second inning for the early advantage after Burrows and Gill began the rally with back-to-back hits. Jose Cuevas was struck with a pitch to load the bases with nobody out. Jonathan Galvez followed up with a ground ball to the right side through the legs of first baseman Tyler Colvin, and the error allowed Burrows and Gill to cross the plate to spur that 2-0 advantage. Long Island would cut the deficit in half in the home half of the 4th inning. And later on, Bluefish would add an insurance run in the top of the 6th inning, again off the hands of Struck on a run-scoring single by Gill that plated Wellington Dell. Don, as we look forward on the calendar now, the Bluefish, you're sitting 2.5 back, 13 games to go, and they've got a series with Somerset coming up next week at the ballpark. What do they have to do in order to make up this difference and find themselves at the top of the standings here?
Well, what they're going to need to do is at least get 2 from Somerset, and most importantly, not fall any farther behind. That's going to be absolutely crucial. Now it's doable for them. They've got games left with the Long Island Ducks, who are in last place in the second half in the division, and then they play Somerset, the team ahead of them in the standings. So it's obviously all you can do is win the games you play and not worry about what the other team is doing. In this case, Bridgeport 2.5 games out, 13 to go. They still have their playoff future in their own hands. If they win their games with Somerset and the games are at home, then the rest of their games it plays out in their favor to make the playoffs by winning the second half of the season.
We had the general manager Jamie Toole on just a couple weeks ago before we went out on the FCX tour, and he talked about how they're just trying to win series. Ideally, they're trying to take at least 2 games. With a 4-game series against the Ducks right now, and they actually had a doubleheader being played today, you'd like to think they need to take at least 3 games, sort of cut that deficit. But when you get to Somerset, they might have to be thinking sweep if they're still sitting 2 games back.
Right. If you're 2 games back and you take 2 out of 3, then that leaves you 1.5 games back with 3 games to play, and then you need to sweep your series and get some help. So you'd like to get to within a game. When you play Somerset this way, if you take 2 out of 3, you're tied with 3 games to go. But if they can't, then you have to sweep either way. The Bluefish have been playing some pretty good baseball. I mean, they're 5-5 in their last 10, and like I said, having those games at home can be a big help. So 13 games to go, 3 of them with the Patriots. They'll probably have to win 6, maybe probably 7 of the 10 remaining games, other than the Patriots, and then unfortunately for them, a lot of those games are on the road.
And you made a really good point too. It's that of those games they have remaining, the last 7 games will be at home. They've got to survive another 5 on the road right now. But after that, they come back down the stretch, and they've got a 7-game home stretch, 3 with Somerset, 4 with Lancaster. And they'll be very familiar with Lancaster. That's the next team that they'll play after they finish up in Long Island. They go to Lancaster for a 3-game set.
Right, and Lancaster also, we should point out like Long Island, Lancaster is in last place in the Freedom Division of the Atlantic Division. Lancaster right now 25-31 in the second half of the season. Although they are coming off a win, they have won 6 of their last 10. But with Lancaster and with Somerset, and then Lancaster and Long Island, you're playing the team ahead of you, and then you're playing the 2 teams at the bottom that are in last place in the 2 division standings. So, as we said, the games are there to be won. It's doable. It's not easy, but you've played the whole season, and with 13 games to go, you've got a shot at it. You're playing. What do the Mets always say? You're playing meaningful baseball in September.
And it's very interesting, and it's one of the things that makes the Atlantic League so cool is that you've got the first half winner and the second half winner. The Bluefish are going to be a team that struggled in the first half. They're actually still, if you do the entire combined standings for the season, in 4th in their division. They're the last place team, but you're 2.5 out in the second half, which means you are good enough to be a postseason team despite the poor record. But again, put yourself in position. One other thing about the Bluefish here, Don, and again, going off of talking about the GM, Jamie Toole, the Bluefish were actually the first team to offer Tim Tebow a professional baseball contract last week. I don't think it's very likely that we'll be seeing Tebow playing at Harbor Yard, but if you are him, what are you thinking right now?
If I'm Tim Tebow, first of all, I'm thinking, what do I have to do to get a football contract, and then maybe it's time to work on some of those cable pullovers with the arm, because apparently that was also noted in the scouting report of him, that he said he's got great bat speed, plus power, good speed for a man his size, but weak and sometimes inaccurate arm. So we knew all those things from watching him play football.
I tell you what, though, it was pretty fun watching him during those batting practices. Smoke a couple out the right field.
He's no one ever said he wasn't powerful.
Oh yeah, but I thought it was a very smart move by General Manager Jamie Toole. Even if Tim Tebow is coming and sitting on your bench and you maybe pinch hit him in a game that's out of reach down the stretch here, I guarantee you he's worth the ticket value and the ticket revenue that you're going to come up with, because you will sell tickets into Harbor Yard for those final games.
Yeah, well, he definitely is worth it. He definitely is worth it as far as bringing additional fans into the seats, particularly fans that aren't even necessarily baseball fans or Bluefish fans. They're Tim Tebow fans. He brings that demographic with him due to his just due to his stature and his and his beliefs. So from that perspective, really, there's no downside, and if we saw him hit bombs, no question the other Atlantic League managers did too. So if he's on his bench, it's almost like the 1999 Mark McGwire rule. Okay, sit on the bench with both hands on the bat and just kind of sit there, and then obviously the other manager doesn't bring his best right-hander into the game now.
But it's very exciting. We'll see what happens with Tim Tebow as he continues to go through tryouts and hopefully find his way onto a major league roster. I agree, though, he should be still focusing on the NFL, maybe at the tight end or fullback position.
29 is a bit old to be starting a baseball career.
Exactly. We'll take one more break here on Nutmeg Sports. When Don and I get back, we'll take a look at some local stories that we missed while we were away on our FCX Fall Sports Tour.
Warm weather, light breezes, boats are in the water. There's no better place to celebrate summer than the Dock Shop. Whether in Darien at 51 Tokenique Road or Westport at 609 Riverside Avenue, the Dock Shop is where you'll find everything you need to kick off summer. From the latest summer apparel to the newest fishing tackle, the Dock Shop will help you get the most out of your next beach day or harbor cruise. At the Dock Shop, you'll find a wonderful selection of items made in the USA and right here in New England, all with a distinct nautical flair. Boater, beach bum, fisherman, or simply love the coastal lifestyle, this is a unique place to shop. DockShop.com.
Walter Stewart's Market in New Canaan is your time-saving local shopping destination for the best of spring. Find many of your favorite products, from great specials on everyday items to the freshest organic produce, artisanal cheeses, and grass-fed steaks. Drop off your knives to be sharpened, grab a beautiful bouquet of spring flowers, and stop in next door for a wine tasting. Plus, their personable staff is always ready to lend a helping hand. So stop in to Walter Stewart's Market, 229 Elm Street today, or shop online at stewartsmarket.com.
What's happening up in Hartford and what's trending in the Nutmeg State?
Join Kate Czaplinski
And Josh Fisher
on CT Pulse live Wednesdays at 12:30 to find out.
We talk to the leaders and newsmakers while breaking down the stories you should be paying attention to each week.
With the help of HAN's editorial cartoonist Doug Smith, we take a humorous look at the news of the week. We talk about everything you were told you should avoid bringing up in polite company.
CT Pulse, Wednesdays at 12:30 on the HAN Network.
I'm John Kovach. I'm a newspaper editor. I'm a high school football coach. I'm a television presenter. And I want you to love fishing as much as I do. Tune into Yankee Fisherman, Thursdays at 1 on the HAN Network. It's like going to the tackle shop without leaving your office.
You're watching the HAN Network, and you're not alone. More than 1.5 million viewers have watched our live sports, news, and entertainment broadcasting since the network launched in August 2015. Advertise on the network that reaches Fairfield County, Connecticut's most engaged audience. Contact Advertising Director Jessica Murrin at 203-273-7312 or email jessica@han.network.
Welcome back to Nutmeg Sports here on the HAN Network. Frank Granito and Donald Eng in studio. As we shift gears and look at a couple of local stories now, and Don, this is a tough one to break right here, but we go back to Harding High School where we have seen budget cuts take hold of the athletic department once again.
Yeah, Harding actually tweeted out last week that due to budget cuts, the city has done away with freshman football, in all the schools actually, but Harding is the most social media savvy of the three schools. As you see the tweet there from the Harding High School presidents, the city has just cut freshman football. With the violence in our city, how are they going to take away this safe space for kids? And you know, it's especially sad because we had the coach on a couple of weeks ago, and he had said the turnout was up, the numbers were up. Harding having finally gotten some success in that Constitution State Conference, you know, kids were coming out, they wanted to play football. I mentioned earlier that Xavier Bass, one of last year's captains, is playing football collegiately now, and it's a shame that, because you never save very much money by cutting an athletic program, but what you do is you take away the potential and for a lot of these kids to really better themselves.
And it's especially tough. You've seen how well that the Harding wrestling program has been doing with their GoFundMe page and the fundraising they've had going on. Football, even freshman football, will not be $18,000 cheap to save.
No.
And it'll be very, very tough for them to be able to raise this kind of money as well. And yes, you could argue, well, maybe they'll make exceptions and freshman players will be allowed to try out for the varsity, but it's like you said, you have numbers up. A lot of those kids aren't going to be able to cope with the difference in being a freshman and a sophomore.
Right.
They're having success moving into the CSC. It's just really unfortunate. And you're right, Harding is the most social media savvy, so we keep focusing on them, but the other Bridgeport schools are really being gutted here as well, and it's very unfortunate for an inner-city school that all these programs are taking a lot of pride in helping these young men out.
Right, because everything we said about wrestling last week, you could say the same thing about football. With football, these kids, they're learning. It's like, for example, they're just to make a commitment to a program, to come to practice, to put in the effort. Just even if you never set foot on the football field in a game, the value of teamwork and of hard work and maximizing effort and just working with teammates toward a goal has value, and and I know they're going to be folding the freshman team into kind of like what they call a Froshmore program. So hopefully you don't have a situation where kids want to play, they want to make a commitment to a team, and they're told they simply can't play. So that will be truly tragic if it did happen.
It is. It's really unfortunate, and we are wishing all the best to all of those Bridgeport schools, from Harding to Bassick and Bridgeport Central, and we hope they're able to find ways to make up for these losses. And again, for Harding Wrestling, they have their GoFundMe page, Save Harding Wrestling. Check it out. Follow at WHHS President, as they will keep you updated on everything going on in the athletic department over at Warren Harding High School. Shifting gears, Don, another news story in this week's is in regards to a scavenger hunt gone terribly wrong. A Ridgefield football player was sent to the hospital Wednesday night after a fight between two groups of students, one from Ridgefield and one from Wilton, broke out. Wilton police confirmed earlier Friday that Ridgefield students went down to Wilton High School as part of a scavenger hunt for their seniors. Sources said that one of the items on the scavenger hunt was to urinate on Wilton High's new football field, and that spurred a little bit of the conflict. According to sources, golf clubs and a baseball bat were used to harm the student. Wilton Police Lieutenant Stephen J. Brennan said in a press release Friday morning the fight broke out around 8:30 p.m. The incident began by Ridgefield High School students coming to Wilton playing for scavenger hunt. because the game was publicized, Wilton students were aware that the Ridgefield students would be on the football field. Don, this is one of the more bizarre stories I've read. I understand some of the cool little things seniors will do. New Canaan, they all paint their cars the day before school. Ridgefield Scavenger hunt. You've got a bunch of it throughout the conference or throughout Fairfield County. This is just when everything goes wrong, though.
Right, particularly because you use social media to organize these things, and guess what, guys? The kids that go to the other school, they all have Twitter too. So they kind of, I mean, as best we can tell, they just kind of waited for him, and then just kind of I don't know, and ambushed him. What's the I don't know what the word is. They kind of, I guess, defended their home field. I mean, and that's. And it's a lot of things, it seems kind of silly, but these things really matter to people. This is important to people, and it was just an unnecessarily provocative act that, and unfortunately, a kid got injured.
Well, and I as much blame as there is on a Wilton student for the thought process being we're going to take a bat and a golf club and defend our territory. It's just as equally upsetting that the Ridgefield Scavenger hunt, whoever organized this, is the thought process. We're going to go down to Wilton and urinate on the football field.
Right. I mean, clearly the Wilton students should not have instigated violence. If that is how it turned out. I mean, who knows how it happened when groups of kids kind of confront each other. But yeah, that was by creating a scavenger hunt item like that. Okay, like that kind of defacing or desecrating of a football field. You know there's going to be a reaction, and it was unnecessarily set up for setting up a confrontation that really didn't need to happen.
I can remember back in 2007, 2006, you had the Staples High School football field that was vandalized, changing the WR. They spray painted it out and turned it into the Peckers in the end zone. A couple of years ago, I think it was 2010, New Canaan High School had been all spray painted blue, all the door handles, one of the Rams out there. So, I mean, this stuff has happened before, and it's unfortunate that these kids aren't really able to understand what you're doing. They're young and immature, and in the heat of the moment, in the heat of the rivalry, it's disappointing that this is how it's handled, but it's just, you really don't want to see any more of this, especially moving forward now. You've got a Ridgefield football player who's in the hospital. We'll be down there Friday night this week to cover that game, and we hope that he'll be okay and maybe be down there too for it.
Right, and that when it comes to athletes, that's where the coach kind of has to take charge and say, if I see anything on your social media about this, there are going to be consequences. So in this case, the kid, I mean, he was brought to the hospital by his parents, so hopefully not injured very badly, but still, when kids are getting hospitalized, the prank's gone too far.
Absolutely. Don, we won't see you on Nutmeg tomorrow, so just before we leave here, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts for our games this weekend? We open up the broadcast season Friday night. We've got Trumbull at Ridgefield at Tiger Hollow, and then we'll be at Stanford High on Saturday when Danbury comes to play against the Black Knights.
Well, Trumbull Ridgefield is the one people are kind of pointing at because there are two teams that really came along last year and are expected to kind of make some noise. Maybe not join that top echelon of FCAC teams yet, but they might be just a little bit below that. Ridgefield got off to a tough start last year with a loss to Trinity, and then toward the end of the season, were playing as well as anyone in the FCAC other than possibly Darien. So I thought if they'd gotten into the Class AA playoffs, I thought they could have won a game or two. They didn't get the chance. Now they are going to meet up with Trumbull, a team in a similar situation. One of those two teams, much like we were talking about with UConn, one of those two teams is going to be 1-0, and one's going to be 0-1. And when you're 0-1 to start the season, you've really especially in Class AA, which both these teams are, you maybe can lose one more game because 8-2 is pushing it to get into the Class AA playoffs. So that almost has the feel of a playoff game here in Week 1.
Well, Don, it's crazy. I was down at Colony Grill last week for Dave Rudin's media night, and I'm talking with the head coach for Trinity Catholic, and we're saying how Trinity, New Canaan, and Ridgefield could all potentially, two of those three teams could potentially be 0-2 by the end of Week 2, which is just mind-blowing to think about how the Western Division has got 4 or 5 teams that could realistically be state contenders. 2 or 3 of them could be eliminated from the entire postseason by the end of the second week.
Sure, and Trinity Catholic obviously was a playoff team last year, and many people, myself included, think they have a good chance at winning the Class S title if they can get into the playoffs. But and to be 0-2 to be 0-2 after week 3, and then you essentially have to run the table to even have a chance at the playoffs. So yeah, I mean, it's a crazy first couple of weeks of the season. You know, the old adage is, you know, you can't lose late when you're playing football. In this case, you can't lose early either, because you can find yourself buried really before the season starts.
It really is nuts. Well, Don, thanks again for being here today. We look forward to seeing you next week. We'll talk to you before those games. Make sure you stay tuned here. Make sure you come back tomorrow. We got Nutmeg Sports again at 2 o'clock, coffee break at 11 a.m. with Kate Chaplensky right here on the HAN Network.